Okay, so this is for CSC155, Chapter 4. We're going to be talking about charting in Excel. So some of the stuff we talk about with charting is, some of the different chart types, the layouts and the styles, uh, where, the different ways we can position them, or we can structure charts in a spreadsheet, in an Excel workbook, worksheets, the different chart types, um, the changing way we can adjust and fine tune data and styles for presentations, um, the way we can edit and format charts to add emphasis, and then some relatively new stuff. Well, some things are old. Data bars are old, but spark lines are relatively new. Can be used to emphasize and highlight data from a presentation perspective. And then also some pointers and tips, best practices around how to recognize and correct confusing charts. All right. So, you know, we start about, one of the big features that have been in spreadsheets, from even the early days, even like Lotus 123 and kind of the first generation of spreadsheets, is the ability to chart, basically take tabular data, rows and columns of data, and turn it into a picture. So, as the terminology we like to use, you'll hear this term, visualization. All right. So that's been something that's been, part and parcel of spreadsheets, going back a long time. So that functionality is pretty mature at this point. And what we've seen is, with the newer versions, as we've seen how as Excel has evolved, there is a lot of stuff that we can do with chart without a whole heck of a lot of, I'm saying not a lot of effort, but it's with a couple clicks we can do some stuff. Now, the thing is though, the key to doing effective charting isn't necessarily just doing a couple clicks. It's actually understanding, looking at the data and thinking about where you want to position the chart, the types of charts, layouts and style, and then what data, what do we want to present? Because really what you're using, what we're trying to use charts to do is to tell a story, to be able to communicate. All right. And pictures can be, especially in presenting data, pictures can be, very effective. Be able to take a set of numbers and convert it into some sort of chart, some visual representation. From a communication perspective, communicating messages and concepts can be very powerful. So the idea though is, you don't get that just the clicking. The clicking is important, but also the thought process of what you want it to look like and what the message is and how you want it to work is also equally as important. All right, so there's two ways. So generally, there's a couple different ways you can do work with charts in Excel. One is the general locations. One is you can do an embedded chart on the same worksheet as the data, or you can create a dedicated worksheet that just simply has the chart, what we call chart objects. So something about charting, the one thing to remember about charts are, they are, and we've used this term, and you'll hear it again and again in computing concepts, is the idea that something is an object. All right, so an object is a programmable something, something we can set up that we can program and change the characteristics and kind of do things as on its own, change the characteristics and attributes of it. So a picture is treated as an object in Excel, or a chart is also treated, and we've talked about pictures before. Charts are also treated as objects in Excel. And it's they're both specialized kinds of charts are specialized because what it'll do is it ties the data is tied to the chart dynamically. All right, so what we'll do is we'll take a selection of a range of numbers, we'll create a chart out of it, and then those the two are tied together. So the picture, as we say, it's the representation of the numbers. All right, so we talk about the difference in representation versus value. So we'll enter data into cells. Right? There'll be a value in there. And then what will happen is we can adjust it. We can adjust the font. We can adjust the pitch. We can adjust, kind of the look and the feel and things like that. In a similar fashion, with charting, what we do is we select a range of numbers, right, so, which will be a range of values. And then in a chart, will give us a picture of it, and then we can change the attributes of the chart. So we can, change it to, chart types, chart colors, different things we can adjust on it. The numbers are still the numbers, so the values are still the values. It's just simply the representation of it, which is a common, it's a kind of a core concept inside of Excel, separating the values of something versus the presentation of it. All right. So a couple different chart types, pie charts, where we have a representation of a whole and kind of a breakout of what the different components are. Line charts, which are designed to show changes within a data series, can be over time, for example. Column charts, compares data vertically, within broken out by times or groups. Or a bar chart. Bar chart compares data horizontally. So the difference between a column and a bar chart. Column charts are vertical. Bar charts are horizontal. And the idea around a bar chart is we can show progress or growth. This is a representation of that. All right. A couple other different chart types. A couple of things we've got out there. Scatter charts. We have, we see things on an XY axis, and we'll see the correlation between the XY variables of where things will sit, relative to other data points. An area chart could be a line, kind of a variation of a line chart. You can just see growth over time. Combination charts, where you can do multiple charts, combine different styles of charts in the same, the data in the same chart. And then something called a starburst or a sunburst, which is a kind of a specialized chart used to display hierarchical data. All right. Excel, all this stuff is built into Excel, so there's no add-on, there's no additional things you have to do. It's just it's built into Excel itself. Our ability to kind of leverage this stuff just kind of comes with. All right. So here's a kind of a an idea is what you can do is you can just the way you generate data, generate a chart is you select a range of data, a bunch of cells, and then what you do is you go to your insert. So where this goes, we'll do a real quick demonstration of it here. Using a blank workbook here. Charting is found on the insert tab of the ribbon. All right, and what you'll see is this area right here on the ribbon deals with charts. All right, so what you can do is we can a quick demonstration. I'm going to take a range. I'm going to create a range of numbers here. All right, and make it a series, so I'll get a range of numbers. All right, if I want to chart that, I just come over here to my recommended charts. I'll do a pull down on it. It'll look at the data, and it'll say, given this type of data, what you've selected here, here are some of the different chart types you can use to get you started. All right, so I can click the chart, and I've created the chart. If I don't like that chart, or if I want to look for variations on it, I have different styles we can use. As you can see, we have a whole bunch of ways we can fine-tune this and adjust it. All right. We can also adjust the size of the chart just by doing kind of pulling it. So you see it shows as a chart object here. All right, and it has its own. And when you double click on the chart, so if I come out here, I'm in a cell here. If I double click on the chart, all right, what you'll see is since it knows it's a chart object. All right, as a matter of fact, if I hover over it, Let me come out of it real quick. If I hover over it, it will say, hey, this, it knows this is a chart. Okay. And as I said, we can adjust the size of it. Once I click this, once I select it, what it does is it actually pulls up a whole new, it adjusts the ribbons to all these different functions that we can do with the chart. All right. So it's pretty slick stuff. It's just a pretty mature um, product inside of Excel that has been, that's evolved over the years. And we can do things like, for example, if I want to come back, I can do another range of numbers. I can do it if I do another chart. I can do as many. I can sort as many charts as I want. So I'm going to do quick. I'm going to do a series starting by 5 or brought up by 5. Connect that. If I want to create another chart, I go to Insert. Look at my recommended charts. I can pick another chart, and another chart inside of the inside of the same worksheet. I can put as many as I want, as many as I would desire. And this is a case where the chart is on the same worksheet as the data, but I can put this onto another worksheet. I can say create worksheet 2. And I can move it. I can put it, on another chart. I can put it onto another worksheet, and the data is tied together. So the data that we selected, the data we work with, is tied to that particular chart. So say, for example, if I come in here and I change this number right here to be 200, all right, all of a sudden it changes it dynamically will change the chart to represent the new number range. All right, so that is, so that's kind of a quick introduction to charts. We've got, as I said, a variety of charts out there, a number of different types of charts that we can use. And once again, it's really designed about, telling a story. So it's, a lot of the stuff becomes, well, what type of chart tells the story we want to tell with the data that we have here. All right. So example here, if we wanted to use a pie chart, we want to tell a story of, okay, what's a breakout of our total revenue? All right. So we have a total revenue number. We have total revenue, and we have a total revenue number here. And what we do is we just simply, we'll take this number, we'll take this right here, create a chart out of it, and what it will give us is a breakdown, a pictorial breakdown of how these things line up. So if you look at the difference, if you wanted to get a quick, looking at this, at the, an array of numbers versus a picture. The picture tells a story, a better, I don't know if it tells a better story. It tells you, a different kind of story about the data. You get by visualizing the data, you can maybe get a better sense of how things are related to each other, things that are maybe significant or not as significant. We talked about line charts. Line charts are usually it shows us information as things move over time, right? How things go up, things go down. A stack bar chart. I actually like this one because this is actually just taking this information right here and creating a chart out of it. What lets us get a vision of what's our total, a breakdown of here's our total hours. This is going to be project hours, so I can see for each phase what our total hours are. Right? So in each one, in each phase is going to be different. That's going to be different. And then how much we've consumed versus how much have we consumed versus how much do we have still available. So I can look at this right now and say, okay, I'm heading towards my longest phase of the project was the design phase. And it looks like it's mostly done. Right? Whereas the painting and decorating, we're not quite at halfway done yet. So you can take a look at this and make decisions and get some insight into what's going on. Scatter diagrams, showing things on an XY axis and how they relate to one another. All right. The thing to remember, and sometimes when you're working with Excel and you're kind of working with the data that's kind of right in front of you, like I've got maybe 30 rows or 40 rows or something like that of data. This stuff, we can put, what would we say, a million rows of data out there. So we can generate charts out of larger and larger and larger data sets. All right, so that we can do the types of analysis we can do and the types of kind of analysis of data and the distribution of it is kind of very significant. But it's also, like I said, part of it is what do you want to do? What's the story you want to tell? What do you want to communicate? Then select a chart that aligns with that. Here's an area chart. This gives us a kind of a variant of a line chart. It'll show us different the distribution of different across different. In this case, this is massages over an 8-week period. Kind of what the breakdown of a hot stone versus Thai versus shiatsu versus pregnancy. So I can take a look at this. I can look at the picture, and the picture tells me a story that you don't necessarily get just by looking at the, and just looking at the numbers. All right. And this is a combination chart where I'll take a bar chart, and over top of the bar chart, I will, add in, say, a line chart, which will show us kind of the peak numbers, but also kind of how things flow over time. So these are point in time. So these can be January, February, March, a summary of where things are at, over the course of the month. And then this will give us kind of a, kind of how it flows. So by combining two different types of charting for the same set of data. And then this is a sunburst. We call a sunburst or hierarchical chart. So once again, it tells a little bit of, it gives us a different perspective, a different view of the data. So after we generate the chart, so we can generate the basic chart, so by selecting a range of data and assigning it to a chart. Once we do that, a whole bunch of stuff we can do. We can change the colors of charts. We can change, add colors. We can change the formatting of the text. We can use 3D effects. There's actually a lot of these charts in and of themselves actually have 3D built into them. So a quick example here. If we look at a chart, if I want to create another chart of, say, this data right here, and I'm going to do a chart. That's pretty straightforward, but I can come over here and I can say I can do this as, say, a pie chart, and I have three-dimensional pie charts. So if I do a three-dimensional pie chart, that's the same number. Now I've charted this. Now this is another example. I've charted this. This chart right here represents this data. All right. This chart here represents this data. Subset, same data is charted differently. Okay. So, and I have a whole range of different charts we can apply. Now, once I've created it, I can change the chart type, and this will give me a list of the different kinds of charts we can use: hierarchical, tree map versus pie, 2D, 1D versus 2D columns. And there's more, and there's other ones out here too. So once you select a particular type of chart, say for example the bar chart here, three-dimensional pie chart, I have different styles. And so which one would you like? So we have, and then I can change the colors. What is, so you have, I'm going to say unlimited, but you certainly have a lot of things we can do to charts. Okay, so so the idea is select data, create the chart, and then once you created the basic chart, then come back in and make adjustments. So you can do 3D effects on charts, rotate them, modify the axis scale, insert trend lines. And this is just within Excel itself. So it used to be, in order to do this stuff, they used to have very specialized kinds of programs that were designed to do that. It's now been subsumed into core Excel. So you can get this out of the box with Excel. So spark lines, so we can insert spark lines. So spark lines is a different kind of a visualization, which will give us a, if I take a spreadsheet, if I do a spark line, this is a relatively new innovation in Excel. I can take a line, I can take a chart of data, or I can take and I can convert it into a line, representing kind of where things are at. So I can look at over this same time period, compare each item, and give a pictorial representation of kind of what the data is doing, going up, going down. It's what we call a spark line. All right, once again, another pretty pretty slick thing to do, pretty slick way of being able to present and telling a story of data. Some other things. You can also do data bars, put onto the worksheet if you want to do a summary, hair product sales. So, you can add multiple. So to actually what happens is you could start using Excel as basically as a scoreboard. You can use it as a presentation, not just of the numbers, but of also of the visual representation from a scoreboard, or a dashboard, scoreboard or dashboard type of thing, where you can just at a glance you can get a sense how things are going. Now, some of the best practices. There's a lot of ways. Excel gives us a lot of stuff out of the box, a lot of capabilities. Problem we run into though is that sometimes you can have too much of a good thing. So the idea is when you're designing designing charts, you want to be sure not to try to put too much into it in one. You want to tell a story, but you don't want to put too much information, because you can mix a whole bunch of stuff in there, and then you're not quite sure what it's telling you. So too much information can be a problem. Ambiguous information. All right. So what will happen is if, say for example, we look at a chart. All right, so things like the labels of what these things are. So this is quantity, profit by quantity sold. Making sure that we label what all of these data attributes are, and label them in such a way so it makes sense. Because what will happen is by default, Excel will just simply it'll put stuff out there, but it won't define what the attributes are. So going back and having to put that information in there and label this stuff up, so once you look at it, it makes sense. Missing labels, missing legends, or as we say, as we said, incorrect chart type for data analysis. You have to look at what you want to communicate. What's the data, what type of data you have, and what is the best way of presenting the story that you want to present, and fixing, aligning the data with that. So a couple things. So a quick summary of this stuff. Before starting our chart, You want to think about your chart location, uh, type and format of the chart, and the data that's going to be displayed. So those are the, from our starting point, those are the three things we want to take a look at. Also want to think about the chart location. Is it going to be, are you going to create a worksheet with the charts on it, or are you going to separate them and put them in their own, create your own chart sheet? Either way, each one has its own, advantages and disadvantages depending upon what you want to do. Different types of charts, whatever. This is all built-in stuff. So pie charts, line charts, column charts, bar charts, then some more specialty ones, but some more specialized scatter charts, area charts, combination, and sunburst. Those are kind of more specialized presentation kinds of charts. Once you build the chart, so the idea was you can build the basic chart, with your data, assigning it to a chart, and then you can come back and you can, make modifications to it or add emphasis to it, like change the text formatting, the scales of the axes. You use 3D, exploding out a pie chart, or inserting trend lines, spark lines, or data bars. So the idea of a trend line, once again, being able to take a range of numbers that you would see on a worksheet and turn that into to a picture that makes that you can go back and see what makes sense. Spark lines become spark lines have been very cool, because actually what you're seeing is, with a lot of times what organizations are really focused on is creating dashboards for operations, where you want to see what's, if you want to see at a glance what's happening. So a spark line gives you, obviously having the numbers are one thing, but be able to get a visualization of what's going up, what's going down, things relative to one another. Becomes a very powerful kind of tool. And then, from a charting design, things that you make sure you want to maybe look at or think about when you're designing charts. You want to remove data ambiguity, all right, and refine your data selection. You want to use the right. You can chart any data, but there's an old term that we use in data processing called garbage in, garbage out. All right, so if you do a bad job of selecting the data, it doesn't matter how pretty you make it. It's still, garbage is garbage. So adding titles and labels, making sure you put something in so it makes sense. So when you look at it, when somebody looks at it, they have a clear sense of what you're trying to communicate. And then finally, what is the right chart type based upon what you're trying to do? Not everything needs a scatter diagram. Are you looking at things, are you looking for things that are happening over time, or are you looking for things, of comparing different aspects or attributes or dimensions of something? Each one of it, kind of think about that first before you start launching into the chart land. Okay, and that wraps up what we're going to be talking about with charting. All right, thanks.